And I was 2,000 miles away. And I love my business, I love my employees, I love my kids, house. And I knew in that moment that if my business couldn't survive without me, it was going to die. And luckily, with the structure I had and the systems I already built, we were able to open 3 days later with getting hit by one of the worst hurricanes that we've ever seen. I lost 90, I think in the book it's 98% of my customers in one day. From a $2 million company to being like leveled. We have one house we scheduled the day we reopened on the following Monday. It was Thursday or Friday. And I knew we had to open because if you didn't open, when do you open? And we always had the saying, and that was a $2 million clean company. And everyone's like, even our employees were like, how are we going to do this without power, without running water? And we figured it out. But we opened the next day and we were able to rebuild the company back to about $1.5 million from 3 years ago. And we were able to grow and scale even better because we had already documented our systems and our processes. And so, you know, as owners and founders and leadership and management, we have this Atlas complex where we think we have to carry the weight of the whole business on us. And it's a founder trap, it's a trap. And typically, we don't have to be in that trap of answering every question, of tribal knowledge. We just talk about tribal knowledge. Tribal knowledge is one of the most expensive things if you're in a high turnover industry where you're churning out employees. Because tribal knowledge lives and dies where people go. And so with the Atlas complex, you know, Atlas didn't have a choice. They had to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. But as leaders, we choose that. That's our choice. But then typically after a while, we get apathy for our own business. And we kind of start to hate it. And we kind of start to hate to show up. And we're like, Sunday night, oh my God, I don't work on Monday. And what I'm going to teach you here is it doesn't have to be like that. I've been hanging out with Aaron for the last 2 days. We had an event in Dallas or Oklahoma, and he was with me for that one. And he's like, I said, Aaron, how much have you seen you work since you've been with me? Not very much at all. And so you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be like that, whether you're an owner, founder, whether you're management or leadership. You don't have to carry the weight of the business or the department on your shoulders. You're carrying the weight because it doesn't live anywhere. And then we're going to teach you how to kind of break that down so that you can then scale it across departments, across multiple industries. So what I'm going to show you guys is what we use in our SaaS companies, in our software companies, in our franchise, and in our home service. So you can't tell me it won't work. And you know, with the Atlas complex, we all turn into Wendy. So Wendy's in the book. I have a friend named Wendy, and she thought I wrote this chapter about her. And it's not, because when we wrote, we changed all the names. And I said, it's because you see yourself in it, Wendy. You think it's you because it resonates with you. And so you can't be Wendy, where all roads lead back to you. Like, you just can't. Whether you're at home with your kids and you're Wendy and you have to answer it. They can't do anything without asking mom, without asking dad. Whether you're running a department, you can't be Wendy, where all roads lead back to you, because then you can't get anything done. And then the job feels heavier and heavier and heavier. So we can't be Wendy. And think of yourself, when the questions start, when the emails come, am I being Wendy? Am I enabling them to constantly seek me for the answer? And in the book, there's a story about sitting by the riverbank. And typically, you know, we do this in our business. We sit by the riverbank, and if you start to drown, don't worry, if you need help, I'll jump in and I'll rescue you. And that gives us this complex of like, oh, we're the hero. We saved them, they needed me. But how healthy is it if we sit by that riverbank every day waiting for someone to drown, just so that we can save them to make ourselves better? And so sometimes we do that in business and don't even realize it, where we love being the answer person. We love being Wendy. It makes us feel needed. It makes us feel like we're contributing to the business. But in reality, being Wendy isn't healthy, and being Wendy isn't scalable either. And so, you know, you are the layer, and I'm going to break into a couple of things. We're going to see if I can draw and hold the mic at the same time. You know, you are the layer, and I want to just give you a quick breakdown of from a visual standpoint, right? We're just going to use a funnel because I noticed there's a lot of marketing people in here. So we're going to use a funnel because I know you all know what a funnel is. And the concept of one layer deep, right? We have the action. We have the action that someone needs to take, and then we have the outcome that we're looking for. And my question is how many steps are we adding in that? So, you might have step one. Then you have step two. Maybe you're even missing step three. And then every step we add here, all it's doing is creating friction from the action that we need them to take to the outcome that we want. And so the more we add, and say if we don't even have step three, and you know what, we're just going to go to step four. And then we get mad when somebody doesn't do their job right. They don't do their job consistently. And that's because we've added too many layers to the outcome we're looking for. So one layer deep, essentially, right, you are a layer. You have to ask yourself, where are you burying everything? Now, this is just another visual of the action I need. What's the action I have to take, and what's the result I'm trying to achieve? How far down do I have to, does my employee, do my staff, do my team, or even if I am the employee, how far down do I have to dig to get to what I'm looking for? And I would say, Google is the dark, dark hole. Google Drive is the dark, dark hole where everything goes to die. Because you can't find anything. And you're like, oh yeah, I have that SOP somewhere, but I'm not sure where that's at. And how many layers are you adding to what you're trying to achieve? Even if it's you doing it, we tend to try to maximize or create, we're trying to create efficiency through adding more complexity. And in reality, it's the whole delete, right? Subtraction by addition, or subtraction by addition. So one layer deep, there's a series of questions, and we can call it align, delete, and execute. So what is align, delete, and execute? Well, align is aligning, and what does that person need? What do you really need right now? I did this to a friend the other day. She was struggling with something, and all I did was ask her, what does the business really need right now? And she was dancing around the answer, and she wouldn't answer me. And I asked her again, what does the business really need right now? Because I asked her what was happening. She said, Libby, I am the distraction. I keep coming in and disrupting my team. I have a new idea. Here's a new thing. I went to another seminar. I went to a conference. And I am the distraction. I said, okay, what does the business really need right now? What do you really need right now? And she wouldn't answer me. About 30 minutes went by, and I kept asking her questions. She goes, oh my God, will you stop it? And she goes, it's really hard to answer what the business really needs right now, because what you need or what a business needs right now isn't necessarily the thing we want to do. Typically, we do the things we like to do or things we know how to do. And then from there, then we have to delete. This is the addition by subtraction. We're trying to overcomplicate things because we think that business needs to be harder than what it really is. And we tend to lie to ourselves, right? So it's cut the BS. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to the team. Stop letting your ego get in the way. And let's start deleting. Does it really need to, right? Are you really good at marketing, or do you just think you're good at marketing? And then we need to execute. I always say I'll show you to the next and we'll just do it. But we need to execute. Do the hard thing, don't overcomplicate it. Sometimes we go to too much thinking, too much planning, versus just executing before we can turn ourselves out of it. So we want to align on what we need, delete any additional layers or steps so that we're not overcomplicating something that truly is simple. Business at its core is extremely simple. People overcomplicate it. And then we can then execute. What is that thing? And you can do this with your team. You can do this with your kids. You can just take them through these questions. And it's amazing what people think about and how they go just a little bit deeper. And so where do we try to, where does complexity come in business? This is a story about the $300 million button. can read more about it in the book. But there was a company and their sales were down, and they hired in a consultant to try to figure out why are people dropping off at a certain step in their sales process. They couldn't figure it out. They tried to do certain things, and in reality, the $300 million button was them simply deleting steps in the process. They had made the customer checkout process so complicated, so overbearing. I don't know about you guys, when I go to buy something, you lose my attention after a few seconds. And so they simply removed a layer of their checkout, right? Real execution, it requires removing steps. It doesn't require adding. And they increased their sales by $300 million by simplifying the checkout process in the cart. Because they had added sign up for an account, but in reality, they weren't signing up for an account. They didn't need to. They could just simply check out. And so they saw a huge increase by just simply simplifying the process and removing unnecessary steps. And you can ask yourself, what at its core do I need to know so that this can be true? Like, what needs to be true? One of my favorite questions you can ask anyone, what needs to be true for them to be able to check out? And only that truth, not additional information, not things I'd like to know, because that is overcomplicating the process. And one of my favorite things to teach is the difference. We're going to talk about 15, I just read 15, that's why I said it. 15-minute cue card. Process versus SOP versus system. And I think a lot of people don't teach this. And what is the difference? So I used to do a ton of business coaching and consulting. I don't do it anymore. I'm very big into AI. I'll show you that in the second half. But what's the difference? So a process is steps. And typically, if you go to like a conference or sign up for something, or maybe you see a free lead magnet on social media, they're giving you a process, probably. Like just the vague steps of how to do something. And then we wonder why we have a process and nobody follows the process. Because it's simply just vague steps, right? It's how this happens. And then we have SOPs, which were really big a few years ago on the book, playbooks, and then Dan Martell, you guys follow him, he's very big on playbooks. And that's your, the SOP. I have one in Google Drive, and it's 15 pages long. But is anyone following it? It's structured in very detailed steps. And then there's a system. And you truly don't have a system for your company until you have an environment where everything lives and you make sure it happens consistently. So if you just have some SOPs in Google Drive, you do not have a system. You just have some SOPs in Google Drive. And from here, the big difference for me is when you actually have the system that runs your business, it then runs itself. So without systems, right, we just have some checklists, some things that people kind of follow, right? Things get missed, balls get dropped, and you have to step in consistently in your department or in your company. When you start to create your system, and the book on your table talks about how I completely built a system for the company manually. And in the second half, I started writing this book 2 years ago, and AI has evolved. And so I would explain to you in the second half how you can use AI to actually build a system that runs your business. Because in reality, when you have a system, right, you have a system, steps are documented, the ownership is clear, there's accountability, tools guide the behavior, and from there, you have rhythms, because there's consistency in business and in life. A Google Doc can't track the rhythms if they're doing something. And then you have the results that you want, right? The results are tracked, and the outcome now, it now runs itself without you chasing it. It now runs itself so that you can go on vacation, or maybe your manager can take PTO. And so it starts to run itself. And from here, this is exactly how we build a process. right? This is how you build a process that then turns into a system. And so how do we do that? We start with the process. And the process is just high-level steps. And the reason I'm showing you this now is because when we show you the AI, you have to understand the concept of how is a process built versus an SOP versus a system. And this is simply how do we build a system? Well, we need to start with a process. We have to assign ownership. We have to attach a tool, right? Whether that's your CRMs, your checklist, then you have to give them ownership. Who's going to own it? And then the cadence. And then we want to track those metrics. And then one really big thing that we do in all of our companies is the last one. It's create visibility. We do everything open. We have a no DM culture in all of our companies. And when you have these systems, these processes, it's great because the system runs the business. You don't run the business. There's a level of accountability now that's visible across the entire company. And from here, when it comes to creating these processes, these are things that we typically are taught in business, but it's one of the things that most business owners struggle with. If you ever want to sell your business, if you ever want private equity to come into your business, if you ever want to retire from your business, using your business as a retirement, you have to do these things. These are the hard things. These are the boring things that create the growth and scale that you can use to live off your business. And also, if you are in leadership or management, these are the things that help you hand off the things so that you can continue to grow and scale your business. Because most of the time we're stuck in a department, whether you're the owner or you're a management level, you're stuck in a department because you can't hand it off. Right? It's tribe of knowledge again. You can't hand it off. And so you're stuck there. And it's hard for us to grow and scale. And your employees, right? When employees, they don't lack intelligence. They lack systems. They lack efficiency. People love to know if they're doing a good job. It actually increases culture. I had someone ask me, Libby, but if I work on this and I stop answering the questions to my employees and I stop answering all these questions, won't that hurt my culture? I said, actually not. It's actually going to do the opposite. Because answering someone's question that you answered already 10 times to some other person isn't building culture. Building culture is knowing that the people in your company know what to do, that they know they're doing a good job. They know what good looks like. And building culture in your company is about having good conversation, deep conversations, not constantly answering the same question over and over. So we're going to end here, and we will wrap up the second half. So this was kind of an overview of what one layer is, concept. And in the second half, we're going to dive into how I took this and we built it on top of an AI that everyone here can actually take home, use, and kind of play with. So if you're scared or you have a little bit of fear when it comes to AI, that's okay. Everybody's like, I just need to know where to start. So what we're going to show you and give you is going to be an AI with kind of like numbers, so you can't mess it up, and you don't have to be scared because we're going to kind of walk your hand and show you how to use it. Thank you guys.